Hello and welcome to the Rewind, where we dive into the making and legacy of various films from cult classics to award-winning masterpieces. Today's movie is Miami Vice, the 2006 film adaptation of the popular 1980s TV series that stars Colin Farrell and Jamie Foxx as James Sonny Crockett and Ricardo Rico Tubbs, undercover cops recruited by Joint Agency Task Force to investigate a Colombian drug baron. Directed and written by Michael Mann, the acclaimed director of The Last of the Mohicans and Heat, and who was also the showrunner for the TV show. Miami Vice received a mixed reaction from critics and barely made back its $150 million budget at the box office. However, over the years, the film has become a cult favorite with numerous retrospective reviews praising the film's visual aesthetic and tone. And joining me today to talk about Miami Vice is journalist Paul Rowlands. You can check out his work at Money Into Light, where you can find interviews, essays, and articles. I'm going to have the link for Money Into Light below, as well, all the source material for all things we're talking about today with Miami Vice. Paul, how are you today?
Yeah, pretty good. Very hot over here in Japan, but I'm coping.
Well, it's very cold in here in Sydney. Today's a good chilly 16 degrees Celsius here in Sydney. Sunny winter's day, but a chilly one nevertheless. But your sunny climes, I think, probably suits better the Miami Vice talk that we're going to have today, because this, of course,
Yeah.
it was a hot property. It really was when this movie came out in 2006. 2006 is a very essential year for myself professionally. This 2006 is when I first began Matt's movie reviews. So it's been 20 years this year since I began doing stuff. It will be later in the year though when I started writing stuff. So Miami Vice was a review I kind of worked on earlier in the websites, the beginning of the website. And I got to say, I was really hyped up to really watch this film because around this time I was deep getting into movies, and Michael Mann was one of those directors that I absolutely loved. Heat was a movie I just watched repeatedly, still do today. The Insider, my favorite Michael Mann film of all of them. I absolutely love that film. Last of the Mohicans, Collateral just came out a couple of years before this. So for me, for all things respective, Michael Mann, he could do no wrong. And you got Miami Vice. I didn't really watch the show, you know, but I knew of it. It's one of those TV shows that its effect on pop culture was still reverberating in 2006. It made the star of Don Johnson, so many things. So, it's Jamie Foxx, it's Colin Farrell, it's Michael Mann. And when I watched the film, I was really just kind of just disappointed with it. And I've watched the film several times over the years. Only just recently again, I found the director's cut of the film, which has like a different opening. It's got like a different opening scene and such. And even though the director's cut kind of fleshes out some things a little more than what the theatrical cut did, I still find myself having the same problems with the movie. However, lately, especially the last 10 years or so, this movie has really gotten like these retrospective kind of like analysis of the films has really kind of given the film a lot of praise. And you yourself, I know we've talked about this film a few times, just like, in different discussions over the years. I know you're a big fan of this movie. Do you remember, though, when the movie came out, what your initial reactions was to the film? And much like a lot of people over the last 10 years, has your um, uh, reaction to the film changed over the years, or did you like it on first watch?
Well, for me, I was like a little bit too young when Miami Vice was on TV.
Mm,
So it was always in the background, and I was always aware of the massive pop culture resonance that it had. But I was a huge fan of Manhunter when it came out. I
yeah.
saw that in video, and that was a kind of epical movie for me. But Michael Mann didn't make that many movies. I think after Manhunter, he didn't make a film for like 5 years, right? It was Last of the Mohicans.
Yeah, I think that came out in 1992, I think. So a good 5, 6 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And then, of course, Heat, I just thought was one of the greatest films ever made.
Yeah.
And so I counted myself as a Man fan.
Mm,
When I heard that he was doing Miami Vice, I thought it was a little bit regressive because I knew that he was the showrunner for Miami Vice, and he was responsible for the look of it and the feel and the tone. But he wasn't credited with writing any of the episodes. He didn't officially direct any of the episodes, and he was only really in charge for the first two seasons. So I thought oh, he's just gonna go, maybe he's just trying to get a hit, you know. He's going for for once, he's going for the big hit. And I went to see it opening night, and I walked out, and I thought, well, I'm confused
Mm,
because I knew that I couldn't expect a movie like the 80s Miami Vice because we're now in the 2000s. So it was like I respected the movie because I thought, well, this is probably what Miami Vice would be now. But it was so joyless and visually ugly. And Colin Farrell, who was this heartthrob in this movie, you know, he looks like a roadie for Lynyrd Skynyrd
mm,
or the other band that he mentions in Cuba. So I was nonplussed, and I thought, well, it was really weird. I recently had the same kind of reaction to the movie Obsession. You know, the new movie Obsession. I watched that and I didn't get much out of it. And I kind of just trusted myself that I've got it wrong.
mm.
And when I see it again, I will see what others people say what other people see. Most people have the same reaction as me. But I thought, given my love of Michael Mann, that there must be something about the movie that I would love. So I kind of really looked forward to getting the movie on Blu-ray. And when I got the Blu-ray, I loved it. And for various reasons, but I thought that this was a really brilliant um, look into the whole world of going undercover, what it does to your personality. And as much as I didn't so much like the digital look of the movie, it did kind of make the world more vivid. And what I really liked about this movie is like the scene where Colin Farrell meets the head of the drug cartel and Gong Li in that car.
Yeah.
It's a really scary, dangerous scene. And I thought, this is interesting. You know, we don't get that many action films that are this vivid, this scary. And the way that Michael Mann paints the corner of the scenes, like little visual things from captured like documentary style, really adds to the milieu of the scene. And I also thought that there were certain moments that were just like pure cinema,
Mm.
like when he goes on the date with Gong Li and he just drives off into the horizon on that boat, and Moby comes on the soundtrack, and it doesn't really make much sense, but it's just pure cinema to me, that scene. And also the little moments that I really love in the film where you got that classic Michael Mann scene where a character looks off into the horizon.
Right.
And Colin Farrell does that when he's trying to get Eddie Marzan to introduce him to cartel. And he just suddenly looks off into the horizon. And to me, that hooked it into, the other Michael Mann crime films. I really do feel like, maybe go into this later, but I really do feel like Heat and Thief and this, and maybe Collateral, they're all part of the Manverse.
Yeah.
You know, we like to talk about universes now, and it's kind of connected by the idea of the timer's look, which I'm sure you've researched, but that phrase turns up in Heat and Manhunter, although it's been removed from the Manhunter final cut, I've heard.
Hmm. Shows up in
But yeah,
Miami Heat. Yeah, Miami Vice as well. At the end of that movie, Gong Li
yeah,
says to him, "Time is luck," and Colin Farrell
yeah,
says, "Luck's run
yeah,
out," which is
yeah,
essential. The themes of the Manverse that I always pick up on, and I see it also in The Insider and even Ferrari, the Adam Driver film that he did not long
yeah,
ago, is about these men who are, in when it comes to their professions, they're incredibly proficient, they're experts, they're efficient, but when it comes to their personal lives, they're just a mess. And it's
yeah,
something that they really tap into in this movie as well, especially Colin Farrell's character. I think he really of Sonny, like he's go like if you're looking at Tubbs and Sonny, Tubbs has got like a girlfriend with the other police officer in the movie. His personal life's kind of like set where Sonny, and that's where he comes to gets in trouble. He falls in love with Gong Li, and that kind of puts like a little bit of a damper to like their whole operation. But yeah, it's definitely there. I mean, and you can see it in a lot of these movies that he does. And I think that's something that is really what I think a lot of people, I'd say men especially, really kind of relate to a lot of those kind of man movies. Is that we see these
yeah,
guys that live by a certain creed, sort of philosophies when it comes to their work, but when it comes to their outside of their work, their personal lives, it's really bad, and that's why a lot of these guys don't have good personal lives because the work, the action is the juice, as they say in Heat, and that's definitely
Yeah,
something you feel with this movie too. Um, Something I wanted to bring up in regards to when you watch the Blu-ray. I
yeah,
think the advance of technology when it comes to home entertainment is something that's really to the advantage of this film and why we get a lot of these kind of retrospective kind of reviews. I think the use of Blu-ray now 4K Blu-ray stuff, the advancements in television screens for whether it be LED or plasma or what have you, really benefited this movie because the color aesthetics in the movie, which a lot of people kind of like really speak to, in the digital photography, which at the time, and I still I get a little kind of bewildered by it because Mann's cinematographers up to I don't think Ali did digital, but Collateral definitely did digital. I think Ali maybe did a little bit. He had some great cinematographers for his movies, and they, of course, worked on film. And so the transition to digital for Mann, which he went all in on, was a little kind of like bewildering for myself, and I think some others as well. But I think us getting having been used to that now, because everyone's pretty much has transitioned to digital, even film advocates like Scorsese has really benefited this movie because of the look of the film and also the sound quality of the film. I think something that some people have problem with the movie, and something I still do as well, is the the dialogue, the presentation of it is kind of muted, kind of really low. And I think having like a great kind of stereo setup with the audio that you can get now, the use of subtitles as well is something that's effective as well, I think, for this movie. Where I remember I was listening to some podcast where someone said they watched the film on subtitles and they realized that all these plot points they were missing for all these years because they didn't realize what was going on. But reading it's like, oh, I understand that now, and I understand that now. So that's something I think that really plays part here. Would you agree that those advancements in home entertainment is something that really help this movie over the last decade or so?
yeah. I'd say so for sure. Yeah, and I think also when you watch a film on, you know, outside of the movie theater, there's less expectation.
Mm,
When you pay all that money and use all that time to go to a cinema, I mean, it's not a big deal for me or you. We love it, but for a lot of people, it's a big event for them to go to the cinema.
yeah,
I think it comes with a lot of expectation and baggage and expectations. And when you rent a movie or make the decision to buy it or stream it, you kind of see the movie for what it is. I think that's another thing as well. And also because the movie was shot digitally, it looks great on digital formats. Obviously,
yeah,
it
absolutely.
probably didn't look as good in the cinema,
Mm.
and it was more of a shock to people to go to a cinema and to see a film that looked the way it did. you know, yeah,
Yeah, very, very true. I want to go into the kind of like the process of how this film kind of got made, but I think we should talk just a little bit about the TV show because it's, of course, this is what it's based on. So for people who don't know, Miami Vice, a TV show, ran for 5 seasons on NBC. So it started September 16, 1984, finished up June 28, 1989. It starred Don Johnson and Philip Michael Thomas as Sonny and Tubbs in the movie. So two Metro-Dade Police Department detectives working undercover in Miami, Florida. The Michael Mann part of this that you spoke of before, kind of like as a showrunner, not so much in a narrative sense of the stuff, but the look of the film is incredibly important, to the success of this movie. This was a movie that really drew upon 1980s culture, not in regards especially to fashion. I mean, to this day, if you see anyone wear anything like neon undershirt with the white jacket on top, immediately you're going to think, oh, Miami Vice, even if you haven't seen
yeah,
Miami Vice, because it's just kind of that fashion is integrated. You had the sports cars, you had like the driving Ferraris and Lamborghinis and such. You had the music. I mean, this show broke hits. I mean, In the Air Tonight, Phil Collins. I mean, that moment in the TV show is still to this day is one of the great kind of like needle drops in TV show history. And man, of course, was a big part of all of this as well. Um, I, I always try to attempt to. I've always been meaning to go watch the TV show, and to just see what the kind of differences between the two are. Um, Before you were saying expectations in regards when you go to the cinema, do you think it's fair to have expectations in regards to how a uh, film property would should be like when adapted from a different medium like TV? Should we look at these as two very different mediums of storytelling, visual storytelling, or should we have some type of expectation that, hey, the Miami Vice TV show did that, so we should expect the movie to do the same thing, or should a movie be its own complete different thing and only really just the title and some characters are what needs to be shared?
Yeah, that's a that's a difficult question and also an easy one. I guess there's got to be some core elements from the original property to justify it carrying on the name.
Hmm.
There have been remakes and redos of things where it's like, well, why did you use the same name? I mean, or when they remake films and then they say, oh, it's got nothing to do with the book and pretty
Yeah.
much nothing to do with the original film. And it's like, well, it's a heist film, so why did you feel you needed to call it, the same title? I think that there should be some core things that the original property had, but that we as viewers should be open minded to see it reinterpreted. And obviously, if we're looking at something from the 80s,
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole thing with the Miami Vice film is like we couldn't really have expected, for better or for worse, what Mann did with the movie. But on the other hand, in Mann's defense, we couldn't have expected that it was going to be anything really like the 80s Miami Vice because it's a completely different era, you know? So I think to be honest with you, we should have expected a little bit more of what we did get based on Collateral and Thief and stuff. So I think that's one of
Yeah.
the things is when you've watched the film a few more times, you realize it's not that outlandish, you know. Yeah.
Um, So the idea for the making of the film comes down to Jamie Foxx. So Jamie Foxx worked with Michael Mann on Ali. He plays the role of Bandini Brown. In my opinion, when it comes to Ali, I actually found Jamie Foxx to deliver the better performance actually compared to Will Smith's leading performance, and I reckon he should have gotten like a supporting nod for that. I think he was fantastic in it. And Jamie Foxx was at a Ali after party, and he was saying to Michael Mann, "We have to do Miami Vice. Miami Vice is what we have to do. We have to do it to do it." And Michael Mann was like, I don't think so. That was the 80s. Let's just I'll focus on something else." And it was an idea that Fox just kept bringing back on Collateral. Supposedly he's going up to Man and he's singing the theme song. And he's trying to like encourage him to get this done. It's like he gets to get me and I'll play Tubbs and let's get Sonny and you direct it. It'll be awesome kind of stuff. And even though at first Man was hesitant to it, he actually started to get into it and he tapped on something that you spoke just said before in regards to the notion of what it's like to do undercover work. I mean, what it does to your when it comes to the psychology of a person, your identity, having this fabricated kind of persona that you have, the extension of yourself, and also not doing it as the TV show, not with the pastels and everything, but like something gritty, R-rated. Something that's going to go to difficult places in regards to violence, and it's going to be language, and it's going to be sex, and it's going to have all this kind of stuff to it, or the mannerisms that we kind of expect for him to do. Um, I think it's yeah. I think for Jamie Foxx's part, it was a smart idea. I think to kind of bring this to the fore because I think around that time, kind of like the 80s were kind of like, around that time into the 2010s, the 80s retro kind of stuff was starting to really
Yeah.
get popular again. And I think it was just even though in my opinion the execution of it didn't work, the idea of doing it, I think was a really really smart one on Fox's behalf. And I could see where Man at first could be hesitant to do an 80s property, but the idea of working on something that's theme driven, gritty, for this time and place of the mid 2000s, I think is something that you can understand why he thought it will work well for him to do so.
It's also interesting, like he shares with David Fincher this thing where it's what comes first, the desire to explore new technology or the desire to make a certain film. I
Mm,
think David Fincher admitted that he made Panic Room to explore that technology.
yeah.
And I think there's quite a few filmmakers. like that. So yeah,
The Matt's Movie Reviews YouTube channel is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you'll love. Well, man, like Collateral's like very much he's kind of like his introduction of what he can do, like his aesthetic. I mean, as an LA story, I found Collateral to be one of the best because just the way he captures the lights in the city at night, and
yeah,
travels around to these different places, and the idea as well of having Foxx come back. I mean, just talking about Jamie Foxx as Tubbs, he's such an interesting guy that he's someone I kind of grew up watching because of his stand-up and sketch show stuff. I don't know if you ever
right.
seen much of the sketch show he did called In Living Color. It was
I
very
saw a few
popular.
episodes growing up. Yeah,
Yeah, and this was the show that had Jim Carrey on as well for a number of seasons. It was
yeah,
actually, and the Wayans brothers, I think, were the ones that created the show. So it's kind of like a bit of a really cool stuff there. And he kind of did that. And then he transitioned to film. Any Given Sunday with Oliver Stone,
yeah. He was
1999.
great in
That's
that.
when
Yeah,
he really great. Then we talked about Ali, Collateral, and in the same year, Collateral comes out, Ray comes out. He gets nominated
yeah,
for both. He's like one of the few that gets nominated for leading and supporting actor, supporting for Collateral, even though he's a lead in there, but the politics of the categories make supporting,
yeah.
and he wins for Ray. It's quite an interesting said because a lot of times you don't see actors with comedic backgrounds, with a stand-up or sketch show stuff, ascend into the dramatic kind of ranks. But
That's true.
Fox is such a talented guy in regards to not only is he a great comedian, he's a great mimic. He's really good at doing impressions, and he's musically talented as well. He's an artist. He's released CDs. He's done concerts and such. And here we are, 2006, and he's pretty much like at the top of his career. And I think if you were going to cast Ricardo Tubbs, Jamie Foxx for sure would be at the top of your list for people to go with. Absolutely.
Yeah, Jamie Foxx to me, I only really noticed him when I saw him in Any Given Sunday,
Mm,
and I thought, that was a really stacked cast, and I thought he really stood out. So for me, I only really know him as a dramatic actor.
yeah.
So it's very funny when I keep hearing people say, "Oh, he's hilarious," and I don't really know that side of him.
I
So
would
yeah,
highly recommend finding some of his stand-up specials that he did post Any Given Sunday because he actually talks about working on that movie, and he does impressions of Al Pacino and other actors in the film as well. And yeah,
yeah,
he's incredibly talented. And watch some of his sketch show stuff that he did on In
yeah,
Living Color as well,
yeah,
because it's a surprise that show because you'll see Jim Carrey show up in different roles as well. So it absolutely was a stepping stone for a lot of actors
yeah,
that became big afterwards. Another guy at the time who was really huge was Colin Farrell. He plays Sonny Crockett in the movie. Um, Interesting guy in that this year, 2006, was a bit of a crossroads for him, both professionally and personally. So we look at a professional thing. He really broke through Minority Report 2002 with Spielberg. I mean, this is a movie with Spielberg and Tom Cruise and all these great actors, but people were remembering Colin Farrell in that movie because he was so terrific in it. Phone Booth will come out after that. He does The Recruit with Al Pacino. He does Daredevil. Then he does Alexander in 2004. That's the other Oliver Stone movie. Um, and that was a bit of a just a schmozzle. It was a bit of a kind
yeah,
of like a big kind of like just what's the word I'm looking for? Tumultuous kind of production in regards to
yeah,
how it was made, the reaction to it. Colin Farrell with that blonde hair and everything. It was a movie that really kind of torpedoed his career in a lot of ways. And then on top of that, he was dealing with some really substantial drug and alcohol problems, especially at this time. It really came to a fore. He actually said in an interview that he had been either drunk or high since he was 14. So he was very much part of who he was and what he did. And by the time he came to Miami Vice, he had developed a real kind of reputation as like the wild boy of Hollywood.
yeah.
linked to a lot of different women and sexual escapades and drunken nights and such. There was even like supposedly a sex tape of him that was going to come out, which he sued about. So he's going into Miami Vice with all of this stuff going on. But supposedly, when it came to a lot of the research I did, a lot of people said that even though Colin Farrell said that a lot of times if he doesn't remember shooting the film at all, to the point where he's at the premiere and he had no idea what he's going to see on screen because he doesn't remember doing a single frame of it. A lot of the
Well,
crew said he was actually quite well mannered and he was always on time and
yeah,
everything. But he knew he had a problem, and this was the kind of like the part where he goes into rehab, and one part of his Hollywood story ends in that the young hotshot actor, and after
yeah,
that, another one is born because afterwards
yeah,
that's when he starts doing a movies with Martin McDonagh and a lot of other directors as well, leading to where he is now. But yeah, really interesting bloke, especially this time in his career. He was very prolific and very everywhere on
yeah.
screen and in
Overexposed.
tabloid
Yeah,
magazines as well.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, he was very overexposed. He was kind of like the Ben Affleck
Mm,
syndrome. He was in every major movie, and he was just getting spread thin, I think. And it seems like a lot of these big movie stars, they need that second act
yeah.
because they just end up overexposed. Like Jake Gyllenhaal after that Prince of Persia movie, he seems to have put the brakes on his career. And, he's like, what the hell am I doing in this movie? And then suddenly he's working with Denis Villeneuve and he's doing dramas and getting Oscar nominations. So I think it's Nicolas Cage is the same, Matthew McConaughey,
Al
you know.
Pacino.
Yeah, Al Pacino, yeah, yeah,
People forget Al Pacino didn't act for 4 years on screen.
yeah,
After he did a movie in 1985 called Revolution, where he plays a
yeah,
Scottish revolutionary in America, which is an absolutely terrible film. He does a terrible job in it. But at that point, like his alcoholism and other things were just taking a toll on him, and he walked away from the movie industry. And then
yeah,
he comes back in 1989 with Sea of Love, and then that kind of started the Scent of a Woman era Pacino, and then Oscars, and
yeah,
working with Michael Mann in Heat and stuff like
yeah.
that. So yeah, you definitely, I think a lot of these younger actors, they get just lost in the excesses that their fame can give
And the
them.
way that their agents push movies on them, like you've got to work all the time, you've got to do this movie, because it's like catch 22, isn't it? You're going to
Mm,
get all the big movies, and you can't really turn down like Steven Spielberg or people like that. Matt Damon, I think, has had an incredible career because he hasn't really seemed to need a second act. He's
mm.
just hit the ground running. Maybe it's because he's got those writerly instincts. He knows what a good screenplay is.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
A third person I want to talk about in regards to the cast, and it is a great cast, but this person I think is very essential to the movie. Gong Li in the role of
yeah,
Isabella in this movie. She's a really interesting. I mean, if you're going to look at just global wise, she's probably the biggest star out of everyone in this movie because the Chinese
yeah,
box office, in
yeah,
particular, Asian cinema. I mean, she was in movies like Raise the Red Lantern, Farewell, My Concubine, just before Miami Vice. I think she like her big kind of Hollywood kind of debut was Memoirs of a Geisha. She was in that movie, the Rob Marshall version of that as well. You know Asian cinema, I think, a little more than I do though.
yeah.
When it comes to Gong Li as an actor or as a star, my saying that she's probably global, bigger than Colin Farrell and Jamie Foxx, even though they're two Hollywood heavyweights at this time, would be accurate, right? She's just such a big star in
I
China,
think so,
especially.
and also like I mean, she was in four Chinese movies that were nominated for Best International Feature,
Mm,
and all of them were with the same director, Zhang Yimou,
hmm.
who ironically made the worst Matt Damon movie ever, The Great Wall.
Oh, right, okay.
The famous ponytail movie.
The, the knob, yeah,
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 I remember when I saw that poster I saw the sleeve in the local DVD library, and I was like,
yeah.
this seems like a fan fiction kind of
Yeah,
poster. I've still not seen the movie. I need
I
to watch
have.
it.
I've seen it. Yeah, yeah,
Is
it's
it
not that
awful?
good. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not that
Was
good.
that
No.
didn't Zhang Yimou do a remake of Blood Simple as well? I think he did.
Maybe. I'm not 100% on that. I'm not
Yeah, I
sure.
think it's like called Coffee Noodles, Coffee something in a tea shop or something.
So it was a Chinese
It,
language remake
yeah,
of it, was it? Okay.
it's similar to what we were saying before. It's like you watch the movie, you don't think Blood Simple, so
Hmm.
it's like I guess, well, so that whole thing with noir movies, right? Blood
Yeah,
Simple. It's basically Dashiell Hammett, right?
right.
You know, yeah,
So the production of this film is greenlit with $120 million budget. You have shooting scheduled over 5 months in four different territories. So you have the Caribbean, Uruguay, Paraguay, and also South Florida. Now, from all the research that I did, this production was snake bit even before
yeah,
things even began. So the movie would wind up going over schedule. Some people say it was 150 million, some people say 130. The studio said it was 135 million, but 150 million seems to be, if you count marketing and stuff as well, how they
yeah,
wanted to go about it. So first things first, Michael Mann wanted to shoot the film early, like in February or March. But Jamie Foxx was doing a film called Jarhead, which didn't wrap till April. Colin Farrell was dealing with some type of injury that even pushed the start date to June 27. And so having that late start pushed the movie right into the heart of hurricane season, which in this territory of the world is just like incredibly dangerous and just
yeah,
disruptive as well. And sure enough, they had deals with a lot of different stuff here. They lost 7 days to hurricanes, Hurricane Katrina, Rita, and Wilma. And also, a lot of the cast and crew said that even though there were like some dire weather warnings and such, man, I think maybe he felt a little bit under the gun for the delays and such. Actually, did some shooting during really unsafe conditions. So in one small, so I read here, there was one scene filmed during Tropical Storm Dennis. Farrell and Fox drove along the street in a Ferrari with the convertible top down. As they made their way along the block, the windows were blown out of a tall building and glass rained down, damaging the car and just missing the actors. So this was some of the conditions that like they were kind of filming in. So that's just the beginning of everything here. I think sometimes like just the weather gods are just going to go against you. Something like Apocalypse Now dealing with monsoons and all that kind of stuff as well. It's going to go against you. Um, I don't know, maybe considering where they were filming, they should have been a little more, I don't know, had a little more foresight in regards to what was happening. I mean, they call it hurricane season for a while, and this was the time when it usually happens, so maybe not a good idea to film a movie during that time. But with hundreds of millions of dollars at stake here, I guess you
yeah.
just have to take that leap into the unknown.
I tell you one thing though, that there's or literal lightning, I guess. But when you watch that, you talked about that scene where they're driving the car, you feel the electricity in the air,
Mm.
and you can see. And there's other scenes where you can feel like the storm in the background, which I think is one of the reasons why the digital filming is an interesting idea because it really does capture it. Really does capture atmosphere and feeling that's in the air, which really I think adds to the electric kind of dangerous atmosphere of the movie. You know,
Another thing that was that crew said made the filming really complicated was that a man kind of went through like dozens of script changes through this movie. So people said that he was like writing this movie on the fly. He would be constantly changing his mind about locations and edits and all that kind of stuff. One person said, so I got all this by the way from this really great article written by Kim Masters that came out in 2006, just before
yeah,
the movie
yeah,
came out. It was on Slate. And so one person said he was almost like a kid in a candy shop, all that kind of indecision becomes a systematic thing. And at the end, it was really hard to kind of like do all the things you need to do because you have to make deals with vendors, you have to rent a plane, you have to close down a freeway, and all this kind of stuff. And I find it really interesting in that for a filmmaker who makes movies, as we were talking before, but the themes, Michael Mann themes about professionals that are really efficient and have their stuff together, that he himself didn't seem to really have it all kind of together. He liked to change stuff on the cuff, which seemed very anti-man to me. I don't know. I found that very kind of surprising that someone who would make stories about these efficient professionals wasn't so much the same himself. But I did again. He's an artist, and sometimes the artist will
yeah.
feel different ways when making a movie.
Well, I think here's the thing. I've interviewed people who were in small roles in personnel on movies, and they've offered me ideas about what they thought the certain director or big movie star, the way they acted or did things. You know, maybe they're not privy to the mental processes of the
Mm,
filmmakers. They're looking at it from their thing, where it's like, we've got to get this deal done. And he's not professional because he's making this deal difficult to make, blah, 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 blah. Well, Michael Mann's job is to make the best film possible.
right.
When Christopher Nolan started making films, people would say the same thing about Chris Nolan, that he would just have this big, long kind of coat with this massive flask of tea. And when you ask him a question, he'd just say, yeah, I don't know. I'll have to
Mm,
think about it. Now, maybe that's just his process. So the way he's conveying it to people is he doesn't know what he's doing, but he
mm,
absolutely does know what he's doing. Obviously, I mean, given all the great films that he's made. So I think sometimes we have to take a pinch of salt as to, anonymous crew member said blah, blah, blah.
mm.
On the other hand, they are only human. And just because they're great filmmakers, maybe they are indecisive. Maybe they are unprofessional. But I think that we have to kind of try and look at both points of view.
It's a very good point that you made there. Um, so another kink in what's going on here has to do with Jamie Foxx. So I said before, so Collateral, Ray comes out 2004. He wins for Ray. So he's a bigger star than ever before. And then, according to some people at the production team, he showed up with a bit of a attitude and a big entourage with him. Number
Mm.
one, he wanted equal, if not better paid than Colin Farrell, considering his award status and his, where he thinks he should be in the billing. So they had to fix that. Number two, he wanted to have his own airplane. He wanted Universal to give him a private jet because he didn't want to fly commercial. Supposedly they said yes to this and they allowed him to have it. And then there was the people saying that he didn't like boats and he didn't like all this other stuff. And I'm like, well, you're making Miami Heat here, and as you see in the director's cut intro, they're undercover as fast boat riders. So that's not really going to work out either. On top of all of this, Michael Mann is filming in some places that even some crew members said even some police wouldn't go to.
Yeah.
Some real and some of the people that were hired to act as security guards in the movie were actual gang members as well, supposedly said. And something came to a fore in the Dominican Republic,
Yeah.
where a police officer actually shot and wounded one of the people acting in the movie who supposedly had like a real life gun in him. Something happened here. Michael Mann said it was very kind of scary because what if the guy who was shot had a bunch of brothers? What if they blamed us? All these questions run through your head. One thing for certain is that Jamie Foxx, he didn't have any questions in his head. He left. He
Yeah.
got on his plane that was provided to him. He packed his bag. He went back to Miami and he said, I'm not coming back over here to do anything else. It's enough. We've gone through tornadoes. We just had someone shot on set. You're taking us to all these kind of places. I'm not going to do this anymore. We can finish it here. And supposedly because of that, there was a big ending that was supposed to be shot in Paraguay, the original ending that Michael Mann had, but they had to scrap all of that and film it
Yeah.
in Miami, which is what you see in the movie
Yeah.
now. And it's something that Mann to this day still has a lot of kind of regrets about because he said like, oh, that
Yeah.
ending would have been like my kind of like it would have made the Heat shootout look like kids playing
Yeah.
with water pistols. But
Yeah.
I can kind of like even though people say diva in regards to some of the things that
Yeah.
Jamie Foxx has gone through, I can kind of understand at the same time like, look, I'm your star. We're over budget. We just went through a tornado where glass was almost, shattered our car, and now someone's got shot. I'm not filming here anymore. I could kind of understand where he's coming from as well.
Yeah. I remember Colin Farrell saying, I think it's in that article by Kim Masters, he said, I had no problem, I would have stayed there. He would have stayed. Mind you, he was drug addicted and alcohol
Yes,
addicted at the
yes.
time. Yeah, I did think reading those articles, I did think that Jamie Foxx was a diva. But I didn't, obviously my own research for today. And there was a think piece, and one of the writers was saying, it's kind of acceptable, some of Jamie Jamie Foxx's demands,
Mm,
because he wins the Oscar for Ray. This is the moment where he's got to set his new salary.
mm,
This is the beginning of his big career now. So in a way, maybe his agent was like, "You've got to get that top bill, and you've got to get, you know." And I guess he was a big property, so he did need an entourage with him.
mm,
And maybe they didn't want to fly on economy class or business
mm.
class or whatever. I don't
And
know. But
I think yeah,
the romantic in me is more like Colin Farrell. It's like, no, it's a Michael Mann movie. Just do what he says. I mean, Daniel Day-Lewis, living in the woods when he did Last of the Mohicans.
yeah,
You know, Michael Mann himself like shot out all his hearing doing the heat shootout, right?
that's right.
So,
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon Prime Video. One of the best on-demand streaming services available, Amazon Prime Video features exclusive Amazon originals as well as popular movies and TV shows. Watch Amazon Prime Video anytime, anywhere. I think as well, in regards to the dynamic between the two, the show, even though it was about the two cops, Don Johnson was the one that came out kind of like the star of that
yeah,
show. And I imagine with Jamie Foxx, he's like, look, I am playing Tubbs, but I'm not playing second fiddle.
yeah,
I'm just as much as like, on that marquee as anyone else. It's about the two guys, not
yeah,
just, Sonny and his sidekick, which I think a lot of people kind of look back on because, Sonny was the one that set the tone with the dress and everything else. And Don Johnson was just a magnetic kind of presence as well, in the way he did that. So I imagine he was like, if we're doing this, I'm the Oscar winner here. I just did Ray. I worked with you twice before as well, don't forget. And I'm going to get my respect for it as well. It's very kind of interesting though how sometimes personalities and ego and all that stuff can really just clash on a
yeah,
movie, especially with a taskmaster like Mann, who
yeah,
supposedly, like, when I read that Kim Masters piece, they like there was a lot of clashes between Fox and Mann, but other people saying like, well, Mann is an equal part, equal parts in regards to criticizing everyone.
yeah,
He's a taskmaster and he's gonna make sure that you're gonna do what needs to be done. And it's just up to the person working alongside him how they're gonna react to that.
yeah. I
And
was
from
just
all
watching.
accounts,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
So I was just watching a Q&A with I think it was Christopher Nolan and De Niro, Pacino, and Michael Mann talking about Heat.
Heat,
And
right?
even
Yeah,
De Niro was saying, like, when the famous, cafe scene with Pacino and De Niro, De Niro was saying, why did we have to do it at 1 o'clock in the morning?
yeah,
And why did we have to do it like this way? And then we have to reverse it. And why did we go through so many takes? So even De
yeah.
Niro was like, kind of like bristling at like Mann's methods and stuff. He's a taskmaster, yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
So this movie comes out July 28th, so we recently had the 30th anniversary. I know you
Yeah.
shared on your Facebook page the poster of the
Yeah.
film and whatever stuff as well. So 30 years since a movie came out, which is just sorry, 20 years. What am I saying? 30, 20 years since a movie came
Mm.
out. And so film comes out, and again, I said the budget was 135 to 150. Globally, the film makes I think it's 164.2 million. So
Right.
barely scaling kind of the stuff, but I imagine, um, just all the different various costs, off the book
Yeah,
costs in
it's
there as
it's
well.
it flopped. It flopped.
It
Yeah.
flopped. But later on, of course, we find out with Blu-ray and everything else, it's becoming a bit of a cult hit again. The critics were very mixed on it. Some people said that the film was beautifully shot, but they said that the lead characters kind of lacked charisma, which is something that I felt as well. I thought that with Farrell and Fox, they're very incredibly charismatic leading men, and I
Yeah.
felt that it was just way too diluted for the movie. But it was the tone that's the tone that Mann was after. He
Yeah.
wanted that kind of gritty, kind of more grounded, kind of moody kind of piece. And the story is very undeveloped. People said as well. It was very kind of complex. I imagine it comes back to Mann kind of changing things on the fly in
Yeah.
regards to script changes and all that. But again, supposedly you watch the film with subtitles, it makes more sense. Go
Yeah.
figure. But it's all
It-
there.
yeah.
But also, yeah, I mean, again, it comes back to some of the things we talked about earlier. I imagine there was a certain anticipation of what people thought the film might be,
Yeah.
and instead it got something else. And it took maybe 10, 20 years for people just to see exactly what my man was trying to do here.
It reminded me actually of a similar movie, Quantum of Solace, the James Bond movie,
Right. Okay.
because that's another film where people had expectations and it was completely different to what they expected. It's also another movie set in Latin America.
Hmm.
It's also another movie where it starts off with an investigation and then it goes off. I mean, at the end of Quantum of Solace, I mean, later we find out it's Spectre, but people didn't like the plot because they said it's just about this little organization that's doing all these things, and it's kind of like Bond is essentially going following the murder of Vespa or her death, and he gets embroiled into this kind of branches off into this small kind of plot, or small by Bond standards, and that's exactly like in Miami Vice, where it starts off in the nightclub, and you think it's going to be about human trafficking or whatever,
Mm.
and then that plot strand just gets thrown away.
Yep.
Both films also start in media res. Quantum of Solace starts in the middle of a car chase, and you're like, who is shooting at who? What's going on? And that's what Miami Vice did as well. Which
The
which is one thing that I loved when I start to rewatch the movie. The fact that man just throws you into the world, and
yeah.
you've got to find your bearings. I imagine most people hated that when they first saw it because they were like, "Whoa!" Imagine walking into that film a couple of minutes late. You'd be like, "What? Did the movie start early or something?"
Mm. I actually
you know?
really liked that opening though. When I
Yeah,
watched the director's cut and they had the whole thing with the fast speedboats and all that kind of
yeah,
stuff, I can kind of understand, you know, that kind of traditional opening.
yeah,
But I like that when I first watched it for the first time. I think my favorite parts in the movie actually was those first 15 minutes where you're in the
yeah,
nightclub and it's
yeah,
the Linkin Park song mixed with remixed by Jay-Z.
yeah,
They're undercover, and then you have John Hawkes calling them and that whole kind of
yeah,
thing, and then that's when it starts to transition into this new kind of operation they have to do. That's my favorite part,
yeah,
and I really did like that, where you're just in the
yeah.
thick of it. Because I think by that time, if I can remember, there was a lot of kind of remakes and such happening, a lot of kind of reboots as well,
Oh yeah,
a lot of origin stories. Batman I think just came out the year before and such,
yeah,
and so it's kind of refreshing to find, oh, they're not just like, oh, I'm Sunny,
yeah,
I'm Tubbs, let's get together and whatever. You're in the
yeah,
thick of it already. I've kind of really dug that. And the way the film ends as well is very similar. I think
yeah,
he drops off, Sunny drops off Gong Li so she can go back to Cuba. He goes to the hospital. Tubbs is looking over his girlfriend, the other woman police officer who's in the
Miss Moneypenny.
hospital. Just yeah, that's right. And then it just ends as well,
Yeah,
which I thought was pretty cool. It's just like uh, you just he wants to put you into that world, and that's something
yeah,
that man always does really well. He like wants to put you into the
yeah,
world of these
yeah.
protagonists and exactly who they are, and you're just like going for the ride.
I think that
And
approach though is what doomed the film, and what kind of doomed Quantum of Solace, because a lot of people are just going to be like, "What's going on?
hmm,
I've got no. I need my bearings. I need context." Like I know a lot of people who went to see Quantum of Solace multiple times because they said, "I don't understand the plot. I
hmm,
don't understand it." You know, and also the mix of the movie. Like there's a lot of exposition in that opening scene on the roof in Miami Vice. And I imagine a lot of people just, they're sitting there, they're settling down with the popcorn and they're not listening. And so they're lost for the entire movie.
yeah.
They're like, Fujita, who's this guy? What
Put me,
John
yeah.
Hawk? Who's he? You know?
Put me through to your sack is like, what's a sack? Sorry, the SAT. It's Kieran Hines and the other end and all that kind of stuff. And all of
Yeah,
a sudden, I think, yeah, that's the thing about the movies. Like when you get into those kind of the nitty gritties of these operations and such, the
yeah,
lingo and all that kind of stuff can really just it works for the world, but us as a viewer, like a voyeur, just
yeah,
looking at it, it's like yeah, that kind of stuff maybe not so much. I think sometimes. I think maybe with Mann especially, he's so immersed into the research of all of these things and so enamored
yeah,
with all of these guys in their professional lives and what they do that maybe the more technical aspects of their professions overrides the more kind of like what the dialogue that they're supposed to speak. I think he sometimes forgets
yeah,
that people don't have as much knowledge
Yeah.
as he does. Um,
Yeah.
you've seen both cuts. What
Yeah.
intro do you prefer? Do you prefer the boats or do you prefer going straight into the nightclub? I like the
I like
nightclub.
the I
Yeah,
like the theatrical. Yeah.
yeah,
I
same.
don't really see the director's cut as much different, to be honest with you. I
Mm,
watched the director's cut just because I love the movie and it's got an extra 8 minutes,
yeah.
but I don't really see it as a the definitive cut. It's just an alternate cut, and I think Mann said the same thing. Director's cut has become, yeah, that's what you call a movie if you do a recut nowadays.
You're
Yeah,
totally right.
yeah,
Well, the movie's really interesting because, as we said, the last 10 years or so, it's become really like this cult movie. A lot of people
mm,
really watch it, and I think the visual approach to it, especially with the digital filmmaking and such, which a lot of filmmakers over the last 10 years have used now, especially younger filmmakers. There's a lot of people like what's his name? The bloke who did Spring Breakers, Harmony,
Harmony
something or
Korine,
other. Yeah, he said
Harmony
that he
Korine.
really loved the movie because and it really inspired what he did with Spring Breakers as well, just like
Yeah,
the look of the film and such as well. A lot of critics and newer critics over the last 10, 15 years have put in praise on the film, when maybe some
mm,
of the older critics at the time when the movie came out, it just couldn't get. And it's a really interesting
yeah,
thing, Paul, in that I'm kind of finding myself in the same way now. I'm 20 years in and I'm watching a
mm,
lot of newer movies and it's younger filmmakers and it's a different way of making films and such. And
yeah.
I'm finding that a lot of the stuff that's out there now, especially the blockbusterish kind of stuff, I just can't get into anymore. And it is
Right.
different the way they do it. And we are
Yeah,
living in a time where the audience is younger in the way they perceive things and their attention spans are different to how we were when we were growing up. I
yeah,
imagine maybe when this movie came out, similar to Quantum of Solace, that a lot of just the older critics who are just so used to seeing film done one way were just
yeah,
not used to seeing this other way. And it takes time for a movie like a Miami Vice to to find its right audience. Maybe even
yeah,
though it was made in 2006, maybe essentially this was a 2016
yeah,
film, and that's why over the last 10 years
yeah.
it's been getting such great praise now.
I think also, when you have a filmmaker who it just goes straight ahead and is uncompromising, has a vision and does
Hmm.
it their way, they seem to be the filmmakers in the films that last,
Yeah,
you know? Whereas the films nowadays that compromise, they do get that initial audience in the cinema, but they just don't have the resonance over time. I mean, that's why we keep going back to people like Tarkovsky and Kubrick and all these people because they're singular. You're just like, wow, this guy's just got a vision and he's following it. So if I was, I mean, you're probably the same for me. I grew up loving films which didn't get a good reception when they came out. And
oh
now
yeah, yeah,
all the people younger than me, they can't believe that these films weren't massive hits. I mean, a
yeah,
friend the other day said to me, is Heat one of the biggest films ever made? And I was like, no. He said, well, how come it didn't make $1 billion? And
yeah,
I'm like, well, exactly. It
yeah,
didn't. It came out and people were like, it's a bit too long and Pacino and De Niro aren't in it much. But
yeah.
now they're the very reasons why they love it because, they're separated and got their own narratives. And yeah. I also think that people love streaming shows now and they love narrative following multi-episode arcs and so forth. And they're enjoying seeing that in films that maybe they didn't like before, you know?
Movies, yeah, like Heat and Miami Vice are very much reminiscent of those kind of streaming
Yeah,
stuff that we see now, where they kind of let you get thrust into this world and it takes its time and it goes into these different avenues and different kind of narratives and plot points and such.
yeah,
I don't know if you noticed, there's a new Miami Vice movie being made.
yeah,
Joseph Kosinski, who did Top Gun Maverick and Tron Legacy, F1, is directing.
F1, yeah,
You have Michael B. Jordan and Austin Butler. Very similar to like how Colin Farrell and Jamie Foxx were in
yeah,
2006. They're the two big guys now. The movie is actually called Miami Vice 85. So we are going to see
yeah,
the 85 aesthetic really come to the fore. And I think Joseph Kosinski would be great in doing that kind of thing. Um, I imagine as well that maybe it's going to be more buddy cop, maybe a little
yeah.
more personable. What do you
I
think
mean,
of something like that? Do you think it's this 85 approach might be the one to get Miami Vice over the line at the theater?
I mean, I have faith in Joseph Kosinski because, and Dan Gilroy, I think, is writing it. He's a good writer.
Okay, he is.
You know, F1 was amazing. Maverick was amazing. Both fantastic crowd pleasing films that were also, artistic. Um, I'd be interested to see it because you're going back to the 80s, and
Mm,
are they going to try and replicate the show? Because the show, Michael Mann said an interesting thing in a recent interview about Miami Vice TV show.
yeah,
He said, I was dealing with the legacy of a TV show that some people had never watched it, but had an opinion on what it was.
yeah,
And everybody had different ideas about what it was. Like a lot of people saw Miami Vice, the TV show, was quite edgy because it was and groundbreaking. Um, and that continued to the movie. Other people, for them, it was all about the designer chic element of it all, and the song track element of the show, which didn't carry over. So, which elements? Circling back to what we started talking about at the beginning of this chat, what elements are they going to bring back? But also, what new elements are they going to bring? Because if
mm.
it's just going to be trying to replicate the TV show and discard the Michael Mann version, then I don't know. So
The yeah, the
I
interesting thing
think the
about
yeah,
the interesting thing about Michael Mann's is only like 20 years after the show ended. Whereas
yeah,
this movie now that's going to come out next year will be like almost 40 to 50 years or whatever.
yeah,
Um, you know, you could say it's a bit of a nostalgia trip, but who's going to evoke this nostalgia with? The crowd's become two decades younger. Is that going to
yeah.
work with anyone? I don't know. It's going to be interesting to
So
see, that's for sure.
so hopefully they're going to kind of reinterpret it, reinvent it. But is it going to be an R rating? Because the TV show was. I mean, my mum and dad wouldn't let me watch Miami Vice
Hmm,
when I was a kid. You know, because for the time it was quite racy. Some of the stuff in it. Um, and I think people will miss the Michael Mann element of it.
maybe.
Yeah, and I also think what's going to happen is that it's going to elevate the Michael Mann film, even if it's my. The thing is, it's not going to hurt the Michael Mann movie because the people that didn't like the Michael Mann movie are going to prefer the new one. That's great.
Hmm.
But the people that kind of liked it or will take another look at it, it will be so different that it will be an interesting kind of companion piece.
It would be. But
I'm trying to think, are there other reboots, remakes that we went back and I'm trying to think.
I
There's been
imagine
quite a few.
the only one I could, well, there's been so many legacy sequels, um,
Yeah,
but they're not necessarily reboots, but like Maverick, of course, with the if you're looking
yeah,
at Kaczynski, but even like something like I don't know, the recent Masters of the Universe came out. That was based on an 80s cartoon property as well.
yeah,
Didn't do
yeah,
too well. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what that's going to be like and how that will be perceived. I mean, I think Austin Butler and Michael B. Jordan will make a really kind of interesting dynamic. Really interested to see what
yeah.
they do on the screen, and I'm really interested to see what Kaczynski
It's
does with
not going
the.
to please everybody. There's
No,
no way it's going to please everybody. So
no,
they're
not at all.
setting themselves up for. I think they're setting themselves up for a bit of a beating.
Well,
But then again, doing Top Gun Maverick was risky.
it
You
was,
know,
and now they're doing
I,
Days of Thunder supposedly as well, part two.
yeah, that would be amazing. I mean, that's another thing. When I went, I'll be honest with you, I was never a massive fan of the original Top Gun.
Mm,
Every
me
time I
neither.
watched it over the years, I liked it more and more because I missed Tony Scott.
Yeah.
But when I watched Maverick and I went back and rewatched Top Gun, I realized that Top Gun was a much more emotional movie than I remembered.
Mm.
And that's the strands that continued into the sequel. And it made me look at Days of Thunder in a different way as well. So it'll be very interesting, yeah.
Well, it will
But
be interesting to
I don't
see.
know what the opening weekend's going to be like.
Yeah,
Miami
it depends.
Vice, they're going to be like, okay. Michael B. Jordan is a big movie star. I don't think Austin Butler has proved himself yet.
Well, Michael B. Jordan's got the remake of Thomas Crown Affair coming out soon, which he's directing as well on Amazon,
Yeah,
coming out later this year, early next year as well. So he's really
that's going
trying
to
to
be a tough
establish
one.
he's really trying to establish himself as this kind of guy who is taking on these classic properties and kind of
Yeah.
redoing it like he did with Creed as well. I think he's kind of found a
Yeah.
formula there to do that. But
That's
until
another one that's going to be that Thomas Crown remake is it's setting it up for a hiding, because the McQueen one was amazing, but I think the Pierce Brosnan one was even better.
With who directed that? That wasn't Martin Campbell, was it?
No, it's John McTiernan.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
That was a fantastic movie. So
And,
it's
yeah.
like, if you're going to remake that, then be interesting to see what they do.
Well, until Miami Vice 85 comes out in a couple of years, everyone do check out Miami Vice 2006. If
Yeah,
anything, just to see how a classic 80s property it was kind of like adapted to the mid 2000s kind of aesthetic, and
yeah,
see Michael Mann, just really kind of like getting deep into the
yeah,
psychological cop thriller, but doing so on a classic property. And Paul Rowlands, I thank you so very much for joining me again on the
yeah. No
Rewind, talking
problems.
all things Miami Vice. We got to talk again soon. Manhunter's date coming up soon. I think. I think you and I need to get back with some more Man and talk some Manhunter in the future.
Yeah, that was a film that just blew my mind. That the opening scene where he's got the flashlight and all that. It's just, that blew me away, that movie. And I think it took like a couple of years to come to England because of some rights issue.
Okay.
So I just rented that movie and didn't know what the hell it was. So for me, Michael Mann was always Manhunter. Like, everyone was like Miami Vice. I was like, have you seen Manhunter? Nobody'd
Hmm.
seen that film until Silence of the Lambs.
Well, we're going to talk about that in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Until then, take care.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content. Also, if you would like to request a review and support my work, please join my Patreon via the link in the description below.